Today, let's talk about unmet expectations and the mental clutter they create in our lives. Mental clutter can weigh us down even more than physical clutter. In fact, sometimes the reasons that we struggle to let go of the things in our home is because of the mental clutter that is attached to them. And that's why in Create a Home That Takes Care of Itself membership, if you're a member of that we've been following a 4-week emphasis on mental clutter. Week 1 was all about unfinished tasks and unmade decisions, the things that quietly drain our energy. Anything that our brain registers as undone yet, and it's just being held in our mind, it's a huge energy drain on us. This is why sometimes we feel like we need a nap. Not because we're short on sleep, but because we've just have all these mental drains on us. We discussed how every avoided task still takes up space in our minds and how even just simply the simple act of writing things down can free up mental bandwidth. We don't have to finish everything today, but we do need a plan so it stops nagging at us. And then week 2, we talked about what to do with the shouldas, wouldas, and couldas, all the mental guilt loops we carry. We talked about how to declutter these by shifting the should I's or to do I want to, like really getting to the answer to that question. Because many times we are guilting ourselves into obligations instead of just making clear, empowered decisions. All right, so now we are talking about week 3, and we're diving into expectations. Specifically, the unspoken expectations and the resentment they create. These tiny hidden expectations steal joy from our relationships. In fact, I always like to think of expectations as a job description. Job descriptions are great for jobs. Not so great for relationships. It takes a beautiful relationship and makes it transactional. In a job, the expectations ideally are spelled out. You do this task, and in return, you get paid. Both the employer, both the employee understand what's expected. Again, I say in an ideal situation. But in relationships, when we have expectations, and especially when we have unspoken expectations, sometimes these expectations, we have them, but they go unspoken, and they create these hidden rules that others in our lives don't even know that they're supposed to follow. Also, we are sometimes carrying around these expectations on ourselves, all these hidden little rules. At the very least, if we're going to have rules in our life, we should be aware of them. But also, we should be cautious about them. Okay, so for example, think about how much we adore a newborn. Every little thing they do is magical. Oh my gosh, look at those tiny little toes. Oh, it's yawning. It's so cute. The reason we have so much enjoyment around a newborn is we have zero expectations of them. But over time, we start to add expectations, like they should be sleeping through the night. When do they start sleeping through the night? What time are they supposed to, what month are they supposed to start sleeping through the night? Mine's not sleeping through the night, even though the book said they were supposed to be sleeping through the night. They get older, we add more expectations. My child should listen the first time I ask. They should offer for help. They should be grateful for the things that I do for them. We then have expectations on other family members, our spouse. My spouse should just know what I want. He should be able to read my mind. Each time we add an expectation, this is the crazy part. Each time we add an expectation, it's like we are raising the bar on our own happiness. So here's reality, and then the expectation usually exceeds reality. So now someone has to jump over that bar just to make us happy. The newborn existed. We just enjoyed the existence of the newborn. But now we're like, they should be behaving like this. They should be talking like this. They should be doing this. And if they're not, we're not happy. And if they are, then we're like, if they do it, we're just like, good, that's what you're supposed to do, right? So if they simply just meet the expectation, we don't praise them, we just assume that's what they're supposed to do. This is how expectations silently rob us of the joy in our relationships. But they don't even just rob us of the joy, they also, unmet expectations start to create resentment in the relationship, resentment on ourselves. So now let me just say this. Expectations aren't bad per se. They do give structure to the relationship. But when they are unconscious, when they are unspoken, or when they are unmet, then they breed frustration. So here are some examples. If you love me, you would just know what I need. But the reality check is no matter how well somebody knows you, they are not a perfect mind reader. They might be a great mind guesser. They might be a great rememberer of past experience. But as far as we know, nobody is perfectly 100% a great mind reader. We can't even read our own mind sometimes. This is what we realize sometimes in coaching is, I'm conflicted. I'm not even sure what I want. Do I want this or do I want that? Because I want both at the same time. Another one, my kids should appreciate everything I do for them. Okay, yes. Yes, wouldn't that be a lovely world? What if kids were appreciative of everything that we did for them? And in reality, our kids are humans. Sometimes they don't notice everything we do for them. Sometimes they will not appreciate the things that we do for them until they are adults and they have kids of their own. It'd be a wonderful, beautiful world. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't teach them to be appreciative. I'm just saying that we should expect them to naturally be appreciative. It's a skill they might need to be taught, not something that they're just born with. Here's another one that comes up. If you are the type of woman who is an amazing friend, and you're the one that it plans the activities and gets people together, sometimes you'll have the expectations, my friends should do that. My friend should invite me out for once. One of my other friends should plan this. But here's the reality check. They may not be gifted in this area like you are. They may not even realize that there's an imbalance. You may be working out of a gift of hospitality or some other gift that is a reflection of your personality, and they're bringing other qualities to the relationship, hopefully. Sometimes I've seen the most frustration happens when we are very good at something, yet we don't actually realize we're good at something. And so then we're just expecting other people to do it too, because it is easy for us. Those are unconscious expectations. All right, now, resentment happens when there is a gap between reality and our expectations, and we don't address it. We ignore it for a while. But here's the problem with resentment. We've all felt resentment at some point, and you might be feeling resentment at something right now, a situation in your life, a relationship in your life right now. I think one of the problems with resentment is that we feel bad about resentment instead of just seeing what it is, which is a signal, a very useful signal. Many times we sense resentment and we do 3 different things with it. We deny it's there, number 1. We tell ourselves, I shouldn't feel this way. And then we try to suppress that emotion. But ignoring the resentment doesn't actually make it go away. It just buries it deeper where it festers. It feels like it just keeps on growing. 2, we try to hide it. I've done this more than once. We pretend everything is fine, stuffing it down, stuffing down our frustration rather than facing it. But this just creates, so instead of having tension between us and another person, now we just have tension within ourselves. It's like we're fighting with ourselves. And ironically, sometimes that kind of resentment leaks out into passive aggressiveness or unexpected bursts of emotion. If you feel like your temper is short or you just snapped really big about what you recognize as a small thing, it might be because you are trying to tamp down frustration or resentment and not even realizing that you're carrying it around. And then 3, sometimes we try to get rid of it by shifting the blame to somebody else. We make someone else responsible for our feelings and we're blaming them for our frustration. The problem with this, we think, if they would just do this, X, Y, and Z, then I would be happy. But the problem with this is that even though it feels like, sorry, my phone is going wild here. All right. The problem with trying to get rid of resentment by shifting the blame to somebody else is that it doesn't actually work. In fact, it makes it worse because we are telling ourselves that we are powerless to do something about our resentment until somebody else change. We are creating a victim mindset within ourselves. We are seeing ourselves as helpless to resolve the resentment because it's in somebody else's hands to change. When we realize that is not actually the truth, that we can actually resolve resentment even if somebody else doesn't change, it can be so incredibly freeing. And that's why years ago I used to struggle with this, and now I see resentment not as something to feel bad about or shame about, but as something that is just simply a signal. And when I notice it, then I can start to resolve it. So, seeing resentment as a signal. It's a flashing warning light telling us that an expectation isn't being met. And this expectation might be unconscious, it might be unrealistic, it might simply be unspoken. There are times when it's like, oh, I had this expectation, and the person that I had it did not even realize that I've carried it. I thought we were on the same page, but we're not. But the good news is this, that once we identify it, then we can choose what we're going to do about it. Resentment is often a sign that we feel powerless in this situation, and it tells us I'm believing that I can't have what I want unless someone else gives it to me. It's in somebody else's hands, and I can't have it. I'm trapped by their actions. That is the real story that fuels our resentment. But now we can question, is that story even true? More often than not, there is another way to meet our needs without waiting for somebody else to change. Now, every situation is going to be unique, but I want to give some broad principles for that. And if you're a member of the Create a Home membership, and you're struggling with resentment, then this is something that we can coach around in the private membership. And if this is resonating with you and you'd like to help and you're not a membership, then check in the description below. There will be a link that you could join. If you're a woman, this is for women only. But instead of staying stuck in the resentment, we can begin to, I don't know if the phrase take back our power, but it's more like recognizing the power that's available to us by doing 3 things. Number 1, let's recognize the unspoken expectation. Ask yourself, what am I expecting here? I expect it, or I expect that my child will do this. I expect that my husband will do this. I expect that my friend will do this. Mine is I've been frustrated for a little bit. A lot of times it starts at frustration, then it moves to resentment. I've been frustrated because I expected that my state government would process my LLC faster. It's unbelievable. My expectations were way off reality-based. So I've been frustrated instead of happy. Decide what we're going to do with it is step 2. If the expectation is important, we do need to communicate it and negotiate with it and navigate it. So, for example, like I said, some expectations create structure to a relationship, but sometimes they're just raising the bar to our happiness. For example, one of the expectations that I have that I am not going to give up, and I have communicated, and it's a mutual expectation between me and my husband, is that we'll be faithful in our marriage. I'm going to be faithful to him. He's going to be faithful to me. That's what we both agree that is an expectation that we have in our marriage. Will I be unhappy if that expectation is broken? Yeah. Now, if I grew up in a culture where it was way back in the old days where it was expected that a man had multiple wives and he was unfaithful, then I probably wouldn't even have this expectation. It seems like a weird example until you realize that not everybody does have this expectation in their marriage that two people will be faithful to each other. And we could go on a side tangent here of the next step on this would be setting boundaries. If somebody broke my expectation, if they do this, I do this. But that's a boundaries conversation. We're not going to have that right here. So talking about taking back our power around expectations and resentment, recognizing the unspoken expectations, seeing if they're even serving us. Well, I expect my kids to be grateful. Oh, maybe I just want to remind them or teach them or model or do something like that instead of unconsciously expecting them. I expect my husband to think like me. I expect my husband to think about money like me. Those are all examples that we may not even be recognizing recognizing unspoken expectations. My goodness, I didn't want to say those three words together smoothly. Deciding what to do with it. We can communicate it or we can adjust it. We could let it go. For example, one of the expectations I let go was that my LLC would get processed in the amount of time that I thought it should be processed by. And I'm like, in reality, we're just going to let reality happen, see what it takes. How long does it take? 3 weeks. It took 3 weeks. I let go of the expectation that it should only take a couple of days. We can shift the story. Instead of saying that they should just know, we can start saying, what if this is an opportunity for me? How can I give this to myself? Is it possible that I don't need this from them? Also, I think one of the wisest and most underrated prayers that I've ever heard is the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I used to struggle with trying to control things and feeling resentful when they did not go my way. And I literally thought I had to change the world outside of me. And what I was not seeing, was not realizing that resentment is actually a feeling, and our feelings are created by our thoughts. And so it wasn't actually the action that somebody was doing that created resentment, or the lack of action that somebody was doing, but it was my thought about it. And so when I realized this, then I could start changing the story, changing the thought, looking for a better thought to have. So instead of, for example, they should have processed my LLC by now. They're holding me up. They're making it difficult for me. I'm like, it'll take as long as it takes. That's the reality. But that's a better thought, because it's like, it will take as long as it takes. And I'll just make sure that I'm prepared to take action the moment it's done. So when we realize that resentment is a feeling, and a feeling comes from our thoughts, then we can actually start chiseling away at the resentment by examining our thoughts and realizing, sometimes we are carrying around thoughts that are not serving us. We're telling ourselves a story that is not serving us. There is a better story, sometimes we use the word perspective, a better perspective available to us right now, let's tell ourselves a better story. By the way, I'm not talking about lying to us. I'm talking about seeing a better perspective, one that serves us better. But God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. We do. There are things we cannot change, but we can have serenity around those things. The courage to change the things I can. There are things that we can change, but we might need courage to have the difficult conversation, to face the uncomfortable situation, to advocate for what we really believe in or what we really desire for our future. And the wisdom to know the difference between those two situations, okay? That wisdom piece, it's everything. Resentment at its core is simply emotional clutter, okay? It's not serving us at all. And just like physical clutter, we get to decide, do I want to keep carrying this around, even though it's weighing me down, or do I want to release it? Now, I'm serious about that. You get to decide. I am not even telling you that you should get rid of your resentment. Sometimes, like I said, resentment is a signal. It's trying to get your attention and tell you, in some way, your life is not the way that you want it to be right now in this moment. So instead of feeling bad about it and denying it and hiding it or blaming somebody else, acknowledge it. Notice it. Say, what is it trying to tell me? And what am I wanting? And how can I make that happen? All right. So holding on to resentment is like carrying a heavy backpack on a long journey. And I think about that first, laying aside every weight and the sin which does so easily beset us. Resentment would be a weight that's weighing us down, keeping us from running our race better with patience, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher. And when we recognize it, now we have the opportunity to take it all and be able to walk lighter in our own lives. Now, that was week 3 of letting go of the hidden clutter, the emotional clutter. If you're a member of the Create a Home membership, then you have access already to weeks 1 and week 2. This is week 3. If you're not a member, and you are a woman who is looking for help to lighten the load, get more done easier, then I invite you to join our Create a Home That Takes Care of Itself membership. The link will be in the description. And then week 4, we're going to do a deep dive into forgiveness. And this is important. What it isn't, how to truly release resentment without allowing someone else to keep hurting us. But for now, I encourage you to take inventory. Where are you noticing the unspoken expectations in your life? If you feel resentment, just simply ask yourself, what am I expecting here? What's coming up? I expect that, and just finish that sentence. And then just notice it. And is it something that you want to communicate, to adjust, or simply to let go of? And if you want coaching on this topic, then just bring it to the next coaching call. All right? Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.